Welcome to Heart Home Community's most recent Baldwinsville Community Update. I'm your host, Shelley Hoffman. Hey everybody, it's Shelley Hoffman, and I am honored to have Jim Hogan here with me one more time. If you haven't heard, Jim has retired from the Greater Baldwinsville Ambulance Corps after 30 years, which is crazy. So thank you, Jim, for being here. And I want to ask you a couple questions about your career and give you some time to tell us some stories. So how you doing?
Great. Good morning. It's my pleasure to be here. Always great to talk to you.
Thank you. Thank you. So you've had 3 weeks to think about your retirement. Are you sure this was something that you should have done? Are you regretting it at all?
I have mixed feelings because I really enjoyed the job. It was more than a job. It was a passion, but it's time. I turned 64 in June. So not that I'm an old man, but I could tell it was time to pass the torch on. But again, I really enjoyed it. So I'm having a little bit of separation anxiety. But it's the last 3 weeks. It kind of seems like I've been on a long vacation. So it's time to go back. But it's the right thing, and then I'll adjust.
I'm sure. Again, we're going to miss you. I said this to you right before we got on the air, and I want to say it again, but obviously this last year has probably been one of the toughest years for people, emergency responders like yourself. And, even if you thought at certain times in the last, 2020, like, wow, I wish I were retired in 2019. I know the community and myself are so thankful to have somebody with your experience to kind of help guide us through COVID in 2020. So I want to thank you for not retiring at 62 and waiting until you were going to be 64.
Yeah, you're welcome. And it was very challenging. And, we've talked about it before, and everybody's probably had their fill of COVID, but when you reflect back on it, it was the most challenging thing that we've ever gone through, because when we go on calls prior, you protect yourself and you make sure the scene is safe and the patient's safe. But you could always see if something was going to hurt somebody or something wasn't safe, where, the virus, you can't see it. Initially you had no idea, who may be infected with it. And, then the symptoms spread where like every symptom in the world was COVID. So it was challenging, and we all admit it was intimidating, because you go into somebody's house and is this the time I'm going to catch COVID?
Yeah.
And then you're thinking of the patient, because in Baldwinsville we had a lot of COVID patients, and some of them were very sick and they were scared. So it was challenging. And then, like everybody, we did all kinds of stuff. But cleaning we always clean the inside of the ambulance, and after every patient, the linen gets changed. But we were cleaning, and then one thing I went out and I did research. We bought this UVC light. It looks like a great big camping lantern, and then after the call, we would hang it in the back of the ambulance, and it basically disinfects the back of the ambulance. So that was a big help. It was a $4,000 light, but that was a big asset. So it was challenging. In GBC, we're proud to say this, at GBC, our staff, we were the only EMS staff in Onondaga County that didn't have members or staff get infected with COVID.
Oh, wow. Nice.
So
nice.
Some of it probably was luck, but I think a lot of it was the crews, the staff did a really good job of just protecting themselves and cleaning, like I just said.
Yeah.
So hopefully that experience will be behind us and never happen again. But again, everybody hears this, got to get vaccinated.
Yeah. Yeah. And the fireworks the other night, I did not get to go see them, but, to celebrate the 75%, that was huge. So like you said, I mean, not that I couldn't talk to you about your guys' experience just for the past year all day, because I could I can only imagine what you went through. But let's go back to what actually made Jim Hogan decide to take this path to begin with. What was
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, that actually it's been over 40 years because I'm originally from the Glens Falls area. Then I've lived in the Albany area. So I started as a volunteer, and a couple of my friends were doing this, and it seemed interesting, and you kind of catch the bug for it. So I became an EMT and as a volunteer because I had a business career, but this was my other career. And then I went to school in Albany. After I went to college, I went to school in Albany to become a paramedic. And I just really got the bug, I guess you would say, the passion. It's just very rewarding. It's challenging, but it's also I never had anything where you get the satisfaction of this type of job because you're going to a call and that person may be having the worst day of their life and you're there to make a difference. So when you make a difference, it's very rewarding. It's a cool feeling to help people. So like I said, you get the bug for it, meaning you get the passion, and then I've never stopped it. I did it for 20, 25 years or so as a volunteer, and then in 2013, GBC was looking for a career director because basically, we're a little business.
Yeah.
And I had the business background, so I was winding down. I was in my late 50s. I was winding down from corporate America, and I said, well, I really love this EMS stuff, and maybe this would be a good transition for me. So I got selected to be the director, and then 8.5 years later, here we are.
It's funny you mentioned you get the bug for it because what flashed into my mind, actually the first time I ever spoke with you, there was he's a gentleman now, but he was a kid when I met him. His name is Joey, who probably goes by Joe now because we're in our 40s. And he was, all he talked about was being EMT and a paramedic. And as you're talking about getting this bug, I think that that was him, the passion he had for it. And I remember, unfortunately, my brother had an incident. And when the ambulance came and they opened the door, there was Joey sitting in there. So I can almost feel, like you said, that passion, that bug that you have for it. I think when it's what you're meant to do, you do feel that. So again, I'm glad you followed that, that passion and stuck with it.
Yeah, it's and I am too. It's not for everybody. A lot of things you see on TV, the normal EMS call is pretty, I guess you would call it mundane, where it's somebody sick or somebody fell. It's not, it's not the newsworthy, sensational thing. So for people, we call it, for people who are looking to do it for the lights and siren, they quickly find out that that's not what it's all about, and they kind of fall away. But if you truly like to help people, make a difference, like I said, it's challenging, very challenging, because when somebody calls 911, you're 911. You can't call 911. And then so you have to perform and take care of the person. So there's a lot of critical thinking that needs to be done quickly. But like I said, it's very rewarding.
Yeah. Well, that's good. If you so I know you covered why you came to the Greater Baldwinsville Ambulance Corps, and again, the business aspect of it, people probably don't see, but in order to afford that light that you had just talked about during COVID, it really is a business. You have to have a budget, right? You have to figure out where the money is. And I know in the past we talked about different buses that you had, or ambulances, whatever you guys call them in your field, and making sure that you can have the latest and greatest that could save somebody's life on the way, but you have to budget for that stuff, right?
Right. And that's the challenging part, the business part of it, because our revenue source is basically, it comes from when we take care of a patient, transport into the hospital, we bill their insurance, and that's an iffy proposition, because if the person doesn't have insurance, then we don't get reimbursed, and that happens quite a bit. and then we're at the mercy of the insurance companies, paying. We have a set fee, and a lot of times we don't get our fee, or we have patients that have Medicaid and Medicare, and those reimbursement fees aren't the greatest. So that's the challenge of making this business go is we can't control our revenue. Like if you're in a normal business and you're in sales, you go out and make calls, knock on doors, try to do advertising, to create business. Where our business is, it's you don't want people to get hurt and sick, but if we don't get calls, there's no revenue.
Right.
But we do get some revenue from donations. Like we do a big fund drive once a year, and the public has always been very supportive of us. So we do get donations, but that's probably about 10% of our budget.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Well,
the EMS side, we're a not-for-profit organization. So like all not-for-profit organizations, the finance part is always a struggle, but we're managing, we're a solid organization, but the finances are a big part of, the challenge of making things go.
well, hopefully it continues. Whoever, and I apologize, I do not know the new director.
Yes,
But
his name is Chris Cullen. Chris has been with us for 8 years, and he was one of my supervisors that reported to me, and he's worked really hard and done in the past year, a lot of EMS management training. So he's the new director, Chris Cullen, and he'll do a great job.
nice. Well, I hope I get to meet him, or maybe he'll want to talk to me every once in a while. You never know. But so let's go back to the highlights of your career. I mean, if you look back over the 30, now you just told me it's closer to 40 years. What are some highlights that any job, there's obviously moments that you remember more than others. Can you share some of those with us?
Yeah, actually, I have one just really recently. We're real fortunate where we live. A lot of things, when you're not in this business, the public just kind of takes for granted. You call 911 and you're going to get the care, and the hospital's going to take care of you, and it's normal, but people just kind of take that for granted. But I had a call about a month ago where this senior citizen gentleman was visiting his son who lives in Baldwinsville. He came up to visit his son, and try to make a long story short, but the senior citizen, he passed out in the backyard a couple times, and then they called 911, and we got there, and the gentleman was alert, but we did advanced life support, hooked him up to our EKG, and he was having a big heart attack.
Oh.
And so we treat him with medicine, and we transport him to the hospital. And the rewarding part about this is, we got him to upstate, and the technology now is, the paramedic contacts the doctor in the ER. We send them a strip, EKG, and then we didn't even go to the ER. We went right up to the cath lab with the patient, and then now they provide what's the doctors up there in the cath lab do is called mechanical rescue, where they're actually put the guy in this, in the CT scan, and they can see where the blockage is. So he had some major carotid arteries that were blocked, and this gentleman, he was having the big heart attack, the big one. And so the doctor goes in and make it really layman's terms, that it's what's called a mechanical rescue. It's a little device like a rotor-rooter that goes in through the thigh into the veins, and it actually goes in and cleans out, captures the clot and takes the clot out and unplugs the clot. And I was able to watch this, and while this was going on, the man went into cardiac arrest and died. So the technology is amazing. Their team of people were resuscitating the man, and at the same time, the doctor was removing the clot. And then the doctor got the clot out, and the man came back to life.
Wow.
So it was just really impressive. And then the technology today is just great. So 3 days later, this gentleman who was in his late 70s, he was home. So I stopped over to his son's house to see how his dad was doing, and I didn't realize that he was home. So I stopped in and I said, I would like to just check on, see how's your dad doing? Is he okay in the hospital? And then the son said, well, come on in the house. He's right here. So, and he gave me a big hug. And so that was really rewarding because it had a positive outcome. And then, the doctors in the hospital said that, a few years ago, this person would have died. And then the other thing, we're real fortunate in our area. It all depends on where you live. Like we have this care in Syracuse area, but there's a lot of other communities where they don't have this advanced care. So that was really rewarding because not only did the man have a positive outcome, but it shocked me that he was home already. The incident happened on a Friday, and the following Monday, the gentleman was home, and he was walking around the house like nothing happened.
That is, I gotta believe that the technology and the advances that you've seen over the course of your career have, like astounding, right?
It really is. And things that now what gets done when people are having strokes, how they can, save people with having strokes, where years ago, the person, depending on how severe the stroke was, they either recovered on their own or they went to a nursing home.
Yeah.
So the technology is really impressive.
I would assume I apologize. I would assume you'd have to stay up on all the education, right? There's so much education involved in what you do.
And that's the challenging part. So our transition, my transition with volunteer to career service is kind of very similar to GBAC's. We all started as a volunteer, and we did a great job. But as the technology improved, it kind of was a double-edged sword a little bit. As technology advanced, as education advanced, as the paramedic level advanced, the other side of it was very hard to keep up with that as a volunteer, because it's literally a full-time job, keeping up with everything. So that's the challenge part, and we still have volunteers. It's just very challenging for somebody to do this now as a volunteer, because of not only one, to become like a paramedic, but also there's continued education. It's constant, because it's medicine. We're practicing pre-hospital medicine.
Yeah.
But that's a good thing for the community.
No, absolutely. Is there so that was a recent highlight. If you go back towards the beginning of your career, and I'm asking you to think back 30 years or more, Jim, can you think of anything at the beginning of your career that really kept you going? Like maybe if you thought this was the wrong field for me, something happened that just made you, like, confirmed it for you. Like, this is where I need to be. This is where my passion is. This is where my love is.
Yeah, probably going way back. We used to have a lot of serious bad car accidents years ago because people didn't wear seat belts, or there was no safety equipment in the cars. And I think initially, I was involved with some rescues and saves where people, extricating people out of bad car accidents that made it. So that kind of fed the passion of, wow, we really helped the person. This was a bad wreck, and you saw an outcome. And then I think probably the first time I delivered a baby, that was pretty cool. It's intimidating, but there's an old saying: you have to treat with your training and not with your emotions, and treat with your training and not with your emotions.
Yeah.
And it can be challenging because that person is depending on you, and you can't go into a fog. But the first time I delivered a baby, that was probably like 40 years ago.
Wow.
That was pretty cool.
Was it in the ambulance or in the home, or do you remember the situation?
Yeah, it was on their living room couch. So, which that's where it happened. It was the lady, I think it was like her fourth pregnancy. So those, those labors for the fourth pregnancy sometimes aren't very long. So, but and I can remember I almost got bit by their dog while I was delivering the baby, and because things are happening, baby's coming out, I'm delivering the baby, and all of a sudden their dog came in and saw me and literally like tried to attack me. Fortunately, the dad was there, and he tackled the dog and grabbed a hold of it and put it in the bedroom and shut the door. But that I'll never forget that, because I'm there, like my catcher's mitt on, and all of a sudden I see this dog with the hair on the back of its neck,
Oh my God.
and fortunately the dad helped.
That is true. If you think of it from a dog standpoint, right? All he sees is you by his owner, who he's supposed to protect, and coming at you. But I'm envisioning like a Saturday Night Live skit in my head right now. Just
Yeah.
so you know.
Yeah, that's one I'll never forget, because I thought I was going to get bit, and then but the baby was coming out.
Right. So you couldn't move. I like that story. That's a good one. So obviously we have stories that say, hey, this is the reason I'm doing this. Was there any points in your career where you thought, maybe this isn't the right thing, or burnout? You know what I mean? That happens in pretty much any career. Yeah. Is there any moment that stands out with the opposite, where you're like, I'm kind of done?
Well, fortunately, when I was a volunteer, I did a really good job of watching how many hours I volunteered, because I had a family and 2 kids and a wife and a career. So sometimes the EMS part, because I was doing it for it was a second job, but it was a volunteer job. Yeah. So there was different times where, wow, my real job isn't allowing me to do this. So I had to back off. So fortunately, I guess to answer the question, I did a decent job of realizing when I needed to back off a little bit. And that's what helped my career extend. Because unfortunately, we in EMS, the volunteer part, like I just mentioned, especially now with the training, we lose an awful lot of people because they join with intentions to help, but they have a life, and the demands of this work. It's hard to explain to somebody what the demands are until you actually start doing it, and so we lose a lot of people, and then we lose people also who are doing it for a career. Sometimes it's like any job, they realize, or career, that maybe this really isn't what they thought it was going to be, or they really didn't want to do it. So I was able to control that, so I never got burnt out, but it's happens.
It's and it's that work-life balance, and in your case, it's work and life balance when you were doing, because volunteer work, people say, oh, you pick and choose when you go, which is true, but when you're all in, sometimes you can get sucked into where it becomes almost like 2 full-time jobs: your actual job that pays the bills, that helps support the family, and then the volunteering that you do. But you want to be there for your kids and your wife or your spouse, whomever. And I think that's a struggle in a lot of careers, but I can definitely see that and when you have that passion and the bug you talked about with EMS.
Yeah, and then you have to really be careful of it, because you can, your family can suffer, and that happens like you just said, anybody who does volunteer work. You have to balance it, and it's easier said than done.
Well, then there's that whole piece too, Jim, of don't take your work home with you. So again, for a long time it was volunteer, but how do you not take, if you could give advice to other people that are just starting out, how do you not take not everything is that happy story, like the gentleman who was having the heart attack and 3 days later was home, right? There's got to be things that you have seen that, when you walk in your door to your wife and your kids, it's hard to leave that at the door, right?
Very, very much so. Fortunately for me, my wife's a nurse practitioner. So the medical side of it, I was able to talk to her about things like that, things about, bad calls or whatever. And so she always had an ear to listen. And then she would also tell me, that's enough, Jim. I don't need to hear from you. We never discuss patients' names and addresses. Right. But so fortunate for me, my wife is a nurse practitioner. I could discuss things with her. And it helped me to talk about it. And then we also try to talk about it at the ambulance corps too. And that can be challenging because a lot of times people say, "Oh, I'm okay," and maybe they're not. And, and then healthcare workers sometimes do a lousy job of taking care of themselves.
Yes.
But it's like we all know, it's good to talk about it, but you actually have to talk about it.
Right. You do. You can't, it's that balance of not letting it consume you, but talking through those emotions. And again, people that are in business or teaching, any profession that you have, they always say, don't bring the problems home with you. But when you're talking about, obviously I haven't talked to any doctors or nurses on this platform. You're the first responder as far as medical, obviously Mike Leffenchak will talk about police related things, but I would again think that things that you've seen over the course of the years that were not, the happy endings and stuff, to not let it consume you would be tough. But
it can be, and it creeps up on you. And but fortunately, as a group, we do a pretty decent job of it. We could always do better. Different people are willing to talk, and we have, the county and the health department has resources. It's just like we just talked about in all kinds of businesses, is getting the person to acknowledge that maybe they do need to talk, or right. Talking would be good, and actually doing it.
Yeah. So let's go back. Was there, other than your, getting closer to 64, was there any other roles that came into play as to, hey, this is time for me to retire? Like, did you have that set in your head? Like, this is when I'm retiring, or?
Yeah, I had when I took the job 8.5 years ago, my goal was to do this until maybe like my mid 60s. And I report to a community board of directors. So I communicated that with the board. And then the board knew I was retiring like over 2 years ago. Like I said, this is when I want to do it. And so we did a nice job as a group of having a transition plan. And because it was just, like I said, it was time, because I want to now transition into happy, not the, just retirement things. And we want to do some traveling and just shift gears and pass the torch on to Chris. But we had a plan, and the board was very well aware of it, and so it worked out.
Nice. Well, and like I said, I knew just from talking to you that 2020 and what a rough year it was didn't come into play with why you were retiring. I knew, that it had been kind of talked about, but I got to believe that going out after, 2020, that was a trying year for you. And again, as a community, we appreciate the fact that you didn't decide to retire in 2019 for whatever reason. And I'm sure Chris, watching your leadership through that, because again, we don't know if that's going to happen again. And you guys seem to work together as a team. So Chris got a lot of experience in that as he takes over the role of director. So if unfortunately something would happen, I think the community can feel safe that you guys would continue, even though you've retired, would continue to meet the challenge of whatever comes, or hopefully doesn't come. Right.
No, thank you. And that's a good point. We're working on that already. Like, we're getting ready we want to be positive, but we're getting ready for next fall and winter. Like GBC, we now have quite a big stockpile of PPE, the famous word, the letters PPE. And we still have that big UVC light lantern and cleaning supplies, and because the flu is going to come again.
Yeah.
And hopefully the coronavirus, the COVID, will, I always like to look at it as a positive thing, but we're ready. We have the equipment and stuff, and you just need to think that way.
Yeah. So I don't want to jump into too much of your time as retirement now, though I hear when people retire, they have a lot of time to quote unquote kill. I don't know if that's true or not, but you had started talking to me about the surprise that you had right there at the end of your career that, people had thrown you a party. Can you give us like how they set you up to actually surprise you? Because that is hard to do.
Yes. In my whole life, you have little surprises, but this was probably the best one in my life. The ambulance corps threw, it was about a month ago on a Saturday, a surprise retirement party at the ambulance corps, and they did a great job. They really surprised me, and so they had to figure out like how did they surprise me. So it was a Saturday, and I was home, and I got a call that I needed to come to the ambulance station immediately because that they could not get the garage doors. There's 4 big overhead doors. They could not get them to go up, and there was calls, and the ambulances could not get out to answer the calls. So I said, what? How can they not get the doors up? And so I was in the midst of doing some things at home, so I quickly was trying to finish it up. And then 5 minutes later, I get another call. Are you coming? There's 911 calls, and we can't get the ambulances out. So I finally hurried down to the ambulance corps. I only live 3 miles away. So I got down there, and I pulled into the front of the station to the parking lot, and they had all 4 doors only a quarter of the way up. So it looked like they're broke. So I'm still shaking my head like, what the hell? So I get out and I walk up to the doors, and all of a sudden all the doors go up, and there's a big group of people there all yelling and clapping. And it was a cool surprise. Lots of people from, past members, all the current staff and volunteers. Bob Wicks was there from the town of Lysander. Joe Sarancini, the prior supervisor, was there. And then they did a great big video presentation of pictures of me from beginning to the end. And Dick Clark, the mayor, as we all know from Baldwinsville, he wasn't able to attend, but he put together a really cool video thanking me for my service. And so that was really well done that Dick Clark did. That was cool. So and then they presented me with this.
Oh, wow.
So I'm a big SU fan. So on there just congratulates me and thanks me for my 30 years of service. But there's these things here are authentic pieces of the carrier dome roof.
Oh, wow.
So and this is a plaque that they put together for me from NAMIs. So that was pretty cool. And so that was very much appreciated. I didn't expect it, and it really was a surprise. So it was cool.
That is an absolute awesome story. And they kept it such a surprise that usually I'm pretty nebby about what's happening in our community, and I didn't know about it till way after. So I think that it just shows how much you mean to everybody, that they all kept it under wraps. So there was no way it was going to get to you, and to show you how much they appreciated your service. And I hear that around the community all the time, Jim, just, what a wonderful man you are, person you are, how well the ambulance corps runs because of you, because of the teamwork and the collaboration that you guys have, and what you were able to do throughout the years, but especially, in 2020. And I didn't realize that no one in your department had contacted or gotten the virus. And I think that alone is just an accomplishment, because when we would talk, you would say, you'd have conversations, say, be careful. It's not just what you do here, it's also what you choose to do in your life. And that means that those people chose to really abide by safe practices outside of their work or their volunteering to keep our community safe. So I commend all of you for that. That's an amazing accomplishment, actually.
Yeah, thank you very much. And again, it's a team effort. I had the honor and privilege of being the leader, but you're only as good as your people. And I've been really fortunate to have really good people and very good support from the community, which is, that doesn't happen. Like, I've lived in other cities, and this is the best support from the community that I've ever seen in Baldwinsville. And then we got involved with, during COVID, Baldwinsville, helping Baldwinsville.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we talked about before how a lot of the people helped, make masks and face shields. And that was really impressive, that group. It was really cool. It really was.
Yeah, it's the amount of people that stepped up and really helped. It brought I always thought we had a good community, but that really showed other people who maybe, go to work from 9 to 5 normally, like down in the city, other places, and then they take their kids to activities, or they go to the gym, or they stay within their walls. All of a sudden, when everybody was home and staying within their walls, I think more people recognize what a great community that we have. And, again, with you and Dick Clark and Bob Wicks and Clyde over in Van Buren, Leffencheck, we have great leaders, great people. So to your point, you're only as good as your team, but we have a community, just a whole team of people here in Beeville. And I think that's one of the reasons I love this community so much. But
yeah, I definitely agree. It's in one word, it was really impressive. It was impressive.
Yeah. So what are you going to do with your retirement? If there's one thing that was on your bucket list to do when you're retired, you can share that with us before we part ways today.
I want to do some traveling. Like my wife and I planned, just make time to travel, various different places. So it's not just one thing on my bucket list, but travel, do some travel.
Where do you want to go?
I want to go out west, like, to the different national parks out there, like, Grand Canyon, Yellowstone. Some of it sounds kind of corny, but
no, I love all that. So, and honestly, when people do it when they retire, they can take the time to enjoy it. I went to the Grand Canyons with my kids, and we were there for a day. But by the time we took the bus from Vegas to the canyon, we did a helicopter ride. You know what I mean? It felt touristy. When you do it, when you retire, you can just take your time and enjoy it. So I think that's, that's awesome. So, well, thank you, Jim. I'm sure I'll still see you around the community. You're not planning on leaving us here in Beeville anytime soon, are you?
Well, actually, that was my last thing. We are moving.
Really?
Yeah. That's what I've been telling people. I'm originally from the Glens Falls area, so my wife and I, we're moving up to a little area called Chestertown, New York. It's north of the village of Lake George. It's up in the Adirondack Park. It's a little hamlet called Chestertown. It's about 70 miles like north of Albany, 25 miles north of Lake Glens Falls. Yeah. So we're in the process of doing all that. I guess we're doing the classic thing. We're downsizing. I will be, I have a son and his family that live in Baldwinsville area. So I'll still be in touch and be here, but physically we are moving about 3 hours away.
So. I saw that coming. I was hoping I was wrong, but
yeah, it's and this has been our adult home. It hasn't been technically my hometown, but it has been, Baldwinsville has been my adult home. And so and it's been a great home.
Well, we will miss you and obviously wish you nothing but happiness in travels and peace and calm. But I'll be scoping you out if I see you in the Beeville area if you come to visit your son. And I won't make you go live on my show anymore, but I'll at least chat with you and catch up a little bit.
Yeah, no, but thank you. As you, like we said before, you've done a great job of, keeping the people informed and communicating with all different little events and organizations. So it's been a pleasure, Shelley. I really appreciate you doing all this.
Well, thank you. And I love talking with you. So, all right. Well, everybody, if you would like to say congrats to Jim, be sure to message on this video, or you've already seen him. Hopefully, we wish you well and would love to see you come back. But I want to say one more time, Jim, we appreciate what you and your entire team did for all the years you've been in service, but especially this last year when it was a very stressful year for a lot of people. And you guys were calm and you were there and you showed up and did what you did to keep us safe. So thank you very much.
But you're welcome. And again, thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Sure. Take care, Jim. Bye.